So welcome to the special Supervisory Academy session by Learning and Organizational Development. I'm the Learning and Organizational Development partner, Sarah Larson. I'll be presenting this to you today. My team is also here from Learning and Organizational Development, Morgan Diamond, who you may have communicated with in the past. She sends all of our communications and is wonderful. And she will also be our breakout guru on Zoom. And then Kara Morgan has also joined us, and she'll be, she'll just be here to be amazing and is a wonderful support figure. So I'm just happy that she's here. Before we get started on this special regarding employee experience, effectiveness, engagement, all of that good stuff, are there any questions? All right, so these objectives have already been shared with you in the LearnMed/Canvas platform. The learning objectives are awareness, identification, understanding, and then application. So basically, I'm going to teach you some stuff, and then you're going to understand it because I've taught it to you. And then you're going to apply it while in this session and be able to apply it back with your team at work. I'll give you a second to read through these if you'd like. Okay. Here's our agenda for today. I decided to get just a little fun with our color scheme here and use some pink to kind of let you know where we're going and kind of alert you to some things. So on this slide, where you see pink behind the numbers are where we have breakout rooms. So after this introduction, we'll go straight into a breakout room with your group that you will have throughout the workshop today. And then we'll come back, we'll talk about employee experience, empowerment, and engagement, what they are, why they're important, all that good stuff. And then we'll do a deeper dive on employee empowerment. So levels of empowerment traits of managers, and also some empowerment tactics that you can use when you go back to your teams. And then we'll go into a brainstorm session where you'll be placed back into your groups to talk about, how you can empower your employees and how that'll impact you and your team. We'll come back, I'll do a little bit of a deeper dive on specific target areas within the employee journey. And then we'll talk about targeted empowerment. And with that targeted empowerment, I'll send you to another breakout room with the same group of people where you will utilize what you brainstormed in the brainstorm session and the answers that you got there to create a targeted empowerment plan. Does that sound good? Are you all ready? It's going to be really interactive. I hope you're prepared. Okay, moving on to the next one. I'm gonna explain this really quick, and then we're gonna go into breakouts, and Morgan will send you into those. So this is just a get to know each other. And what I want you to share with each other is, what was it like receiving your offer of employment from Stanford? Or what was your first day like at Stanford? You're welcome to share just one answer to this question, or both. Or if you have something else that really kind of heightened your experience at Stanford or Stanford Medicine in general, please share that with your group. You'll be put into groups of 3 or 4, and you'll be in that room for about 8 minutes. Are there any questions on this before we send you out to your groups? Summer's shaking her head. All right, sounds good. Morgan, whenever you are ready, go for it. So how was that for everyone? How was it to reminisce on the first experience for you with Stanford? You could either put that in chat, your response, or you can share out loud if you like. We have time for that. Anyone?
It was fun. It was fun to hear other people's experiences. Mine wasn't exactly the best. So I told my crew that it was kind of a rough start. My very first day, I broke a tooth and had an emergency root canal. And then I spent the rest of the week trying to understand all the dozens of acronyms at Stanford. So
it only took you a week?
No, I said that I tried for a week, but yeah, but that was 10 years ago. So obviously I like it.
Yeah, and a lot of things have changed since then. I see Sumana's comment, heartwarming and thrilling to remember. Absolutely, I totally agree. So thank you all for sharing and taking the time to share that with your group. So these groups that you met in, you will be in the same groups when we go into 2 more breakouts throughout the session. So let's go into what employee experience is. So what you just experienced in your breakout room was reminiscing about one of those pivotal employee experience points in your employee experience journey. And you're probably just like, what's an employee experience journey? Don't worry, we will get there. So to go over what employee experience is, it's that overall, it's that day to day, it drives employee engagement. Think about, your commuting to work is going to affect your work life and your engagement at work, your project deadlines, the way we as managers work with our employees on a daily basis. So think about how you delegate the work, how you partner with them, how you set expectations, represent and support them in meetings. All of that is the employee experience. So this is the employee experience journey that I was telling you about. And you were just talking about the kind of accept and learn. So that's kind of like stage 3 right here. And this is a very, very, very general employee experience journey map. And the employee journey is the time that the employee spends at a company. And it starts when the employee applies to the organization, and it ends when the employee quits the organization, or potentially, as you can see here on the slide, advocates for the organization after they've left. All the time between these two moments, between the job search and advocating for the organization, are the experiences, are the employee experience journey. Along the journey, there are key moments and memorable experiences that can have a lasting impact on employees' opinions of their workplace. So for example, you talked about your first day at Stanford, or what it was like getting that offer. Those are memorable experiences to you. And I'm presuming that some of them are really, really good. And some of them, similar to Linda, maybe weren't the best, but you still remember it. And, not to speak on behalf of Linda, but the fact that she had to have an emergency root canal the first day, and, Stanford was like still welcoming her with open arms, probably left a really good impression on her that like Stanford's here to support you, and we want you to be first, and we want the employee to be first. And then, so thinking back, the reason why I asked you those two specific questions is because those are things that you're likely to remember. An employee can likely remember the excitement of their first day at work, which we talked about, but you may not remember your second or third day. Pinpointing these important moments helps you build a strong foundation for a positive employee experience overall. So similar to a customer journey map, the employee journey map is essentially plotting out end-to-end experience of your employees. In many cases, an employee journey map has been successful in improving the employee experience, helping identify areas for improvement and setting out clear expectations of your employees. The mapping process rakes the perspective of the employees, emphasizes those moments that matter, and these moments range from day one on the job to attending a company-wide meeting, pursuing new training opportunities like where we're at now. Additionally, it's also important to remember that not one size does not fit all. The statistics do not represent the individual. Every single person has a different employee experience. And it's also, differences by generation and differences by other demographics and stuff like that. So consider that. And if you are interested in creating an employee experience journey map for your employees, feel free to reach out to me at any time. We're not going to go into the entire employee experience journey because it's a lot. Instead, we're going to focus on when the employee has accepted, like once they've accepted the offer, they're in the job, and then maybe they're searching for growth. So maybe they're at the top of their game and they're like, okay, what's next? I get this job. I want more. I want stretch assignments, for example, stuff like that. So that's where our focus will be for the day. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into that right now. So the input overall is employee experience. So that every single interaction, so think about, project deadlines, commuting to work, stuff like that. That's the input of the employee experience that creates employee engagement or employee empowerment, depending on what's going on. So as managers, I want you to understand how your role impacts the engagement of your employees. In all of the research and studies conducted time and time again, it's the relationship with the manager that impacts an employee's level of engagement the most. So remember that you too are employees. Your personal level of engagement impacts that of your team. So in other words, a team's employee experience impacts the quality of engagement, which then becomes a predictor of retention. So as we look at this slide here, you're probably thinking, you're like, okay, so if employee experience has an outcome of employee empowerment and employee engagement, what could be the difference between employee experience and employee engagement. So employee experience, as I've said, is that day-to-day that drives employee experience. So think about it as, all of the inputs that go in, and then employee engagement is what comes out, presuming it's a positive experience. So I'm using you again, Linda, and we've worked before, so I feel like this is okay. But for example, if she had maybe, chipped her tooth and had to go into the dentist, and then, she was treated poorly after that, that would definitely decrease her engagement and really give her a very negative experience of Stanford in general. Thankfully, that did not happen. And, Stanford is Stanford, and they were very supportive, but that could be something that could affect an employee's engagement throughout the rest of their tenure. So as a result, we have more control as managers over the employee experience, not so much over the employee engagement perspective. You have to think about the input and the outcome. And with that, we also have control over employee empowerment. So instead of really looking at how are we engaging employees throughout this workshop, I almost called it a course, it also is a course, we're going to focus on employee empowerment throughout this. And so if you look at that little pink arrow, that is where we are going next. And we're looking at how empowerment will increase employee engagement, and where along that employee experience we can really apply those employee empowerment tactics, which we will go over. I feel like that could be confusing. So just to give you a quick summary. So the input is employee experience. We have this employee experience journey. And then we're going to go to employee empowerment and looking at employee empowerment and how that can increase employee engagement. Because employee engagement, I'm sure you've heard, is really important. It determines retention, satisfaction, contributions, all of that stuff. Any questions before we move on to looking at how employee empowerment leads to employee engagement? I'm sorry, I'm really passionate about this, so if I talk a little fast, I apologize. So employee empowerment, we've seen that these are both outcomes of the employee experience. So what's the difference between them? Engagement can be seen as an outcome from employee empowerment. So employee empowerment, I'll read the definition for you on here. It says, the degree to which a worker feels independence, freedom, and discretion to plan the work process and choose how to complete the work. So to me, what employee empowerment sounds like is giving the employee authority over their work. And by giving them authority and giving them the ability to make those choices on their own, it'll lead to employee engagement through specifically contribution. So if you look at the definition, of employee engagement, the deep commitment employees have to an organization. This commitment supports organizational success through satisfaction and contribution. So looking at that small contribution piece in regards to employee empowerment. Any questions? Okay, so this is a little fun cartoon of Kevin Moody, who is our Associate Dean of Human Resources and OFPM. If you were in the LEAP program that we had yesterday, he did talk a little bit about empowerment, and I wanted to bring that into this space. So just to reiterate, the definition of employee engagement states, the deep commitment, sorry, I hit the wrong button. The deep commitment employees have to an organization. This commitment supports organizational success through satisfaction and contribution. Empowerment relates to that contribution piece. When an employee understands how their work affects the organization, when they feel like they are making a contribution to the organization, when they feel as though they have independence and support from leadership to make the right decision, and in some, when they have authority. Another way to empower your employees is to legitimize your colleagues in the face of others, and that comes directly from Kevin Moody. So as we were talking about empowerment yesterday, he stated that he talks up his team to others because he sees his team as the biggest support foundation that he has. And he knows that, by empowering his employees to kind of know that they are authoritative over their work and they can do their work correctly and they can make their own decisions, therefore empowers them to be more engaged and to, put a little bit more into their efforts and their work. So we're going to go more into empowerment on the next slide. Are there any questions so far?
Sarah, I had a question. This is Ned.
Hi, Ned.
What if that work, that empowerment that employee has, with that empowerment, what if that work isn't getting completed? Or will you get to that in the next slide? Or what would you do if the process is off there, or that empowerment part is a little off, or again, that work isn't being completed?
I would take a step back and wonder, what was communicated to the employee, you know? So I'm trying to think of an example. So say you give an employee like, hey, you know what, you're gonna own, I can use myself, you're gonna own Supervisory Academy. And so when I took over ownership over Supervisory Academy, first of all, I didn't know what that entailed. It was fun to learn. But I had to learn and be proactive throughout the entire process to be able to own Supervisory Academy, and not only own it, but transition it from a completely in-person program to completely virtual. And so that was me being empowered by my boss to be like, hey, she was like, now that you understand Supervisory Academy, if you want to take it virtual, you can. And so I had to do a lot of research on the back end to understand what that transition would look like. And that was, I guess, clear vision from my manager, Karen VC, or supervisor, whatever you want to call her, and saying like, I want a virtual course, or I want this to turn virtual, but she didn't necessarily tell me what she wanted in that virtual course, what specifically she was looking for. That was all of those decisions were mine. And that empowered me to do the best that I could. So if you can give me an example of when empowerment didn't work for you, I might be able to help you with that specifically.
No, I think you answered the question with the clarity. I don't have an example off the top of my head, but just, this was a hypothetical on my end. But yeah, no, thank you though.
Absolutely. Zoe, I see your hands up.
Hi, Sarah. I just am wondering, how, as a manager, do you facilitate employee empowerment when you may have a supervisor or a leadership structure that is, quote, old school, where they don't feel as comfortable with some of what we see as traditional empowerment mechanisms in the workplace today?
That's an excellent question. So let me just clarify what you're saying. You're saying that, so are you saying that this is a problem for, say, a middle manager? So say like, this manager is reporting to a director, and then they have their subordinates, and then with their director is more so, let's be traditional about it. Let's keep everything in line. Let's do things a specific way and follow a specific process. And then the middle manager is saying, I want to empower my employees to do their best work. And by doing so, you are giving them authority and empowering them to choose the way that they do their own work, as opposed to following a specific process of steps.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll go into that a little bit further, probably in the next slide. But what I will say is that comes with, trust and psychological safety. And what that sounds like to me is that director, I would say, probably trusts the manager, but maybe doesn't trust the subordinates under the manager for whatever reason. And in that case, if I was the middle manager, I would go to my director and be like, hey, this is really going to improve our engagement. This is likely also going to improve our retention if we allow them to do these processes in their own way. Also, it'll likely improve the effectiveness of those processes by allowing them to bring in their own perspectives. And so I would just, kind of explain that to my director, and then also get down to the kind of key from the director. Like, what is the director either fearful of, or what has happened in the past to the director where they don't want to kind of let go of that kind of locus of control, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I'll be keen see what we go over the next couple of slides as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, and you're always welcome to reach out directly if you're not comfortable, talking more in depth about it in the session. Okay. All right, moving forward. Okay, so what does empowerment look like on different levels within the organization? I'm going to go into all three. we will only focus on the team because this is where we are. This is supervisory academy, but I want to give you information on all of them so that, you have a holistic understanding of what employee empowerment could look like at an organization. So on the community and team levels, they should exist by default. However, achieving individual empowerment requires much more work and effort and involves several functions in the organization. Encouraging employees to take leadership of their roles results in a high impact and positive long-term effects for the company and its employees. When companies provide employees with support individually and professionally, they also integrate employees more closely to the company mission. So the 3 levels of employee empowerment, as you see here in the workplace, can happen on different organizational levels. This is the most common kind of segmentation you have that we've seen in research. So number 1, empowerment on the organizational or community level. An organization that cultivates employee empowerment can better embrace change and agility, such as digital transformation. They recognize employees' contributions to the business. They reward responsible ownership in the workplace. They support collaboration, including cross-departmental collaboration in the workplace, foster a culture of employee engagement, and thus encourage retention of top talent. So I can give you an example of some of these at Stanford specifically. Pardon me. So one of the things I said was talking about cross-departmental collaboration. One of the programs we have that has just opened up for the 2nd cohort is called RING. It is Reciprocal Inclusive Networking Group, and it's kind of like a mentorship model, a mentorship circle model, where you have one mentor to a group of 2 to 4 mentees, but everyone in that group is from a different department or a different part of Stanford Medicine. So that encourages that cross-departmental collaboration. Another example in the mentorship space would be the Stanford Mentorship Program in general, because the committee on the Stanford Mentorship Program, they're from everywhere in the Stanford Medicine organization. We have a few JFAs, we have, some people from HR, we also have some people from administration on there. And so those are just examples of how the organization is empowering their employees to be more engaged and really affect change in the organization. Any questions on the organizational pillar before I move on to the team pillar? Cool. So on the team level, so empowering leaders can better support their team and help each team member reach their targets, provide information that the teams need when they need it, and better communicate the business goals and long-term vision. So to me, that means transparent communication. Inspire and motivate your employees to help them better connect and include the ones working remotely. So let me think of an example for that with a team. For example, on our team, learning and organizational development specifically, we are very supportive of each other. We are very transparent in our communications. I've been setting up a workshop for a specific group, and my partner, manager, Kara, she came in and she was like, hey, I heard, someone came to me requesting something else. I heard about this. And so that helped me to better evaluate what I was doing and kind of course correct to make sure that I was going to submit and perform the best workshop possible to that department. And that's just an example of how we transparently communicate with each other and also respect each other. I'm trying to think, does anyone have any team examples that they'd like to share?
Hi, Sarah, this is Tejinder. And yesterday, I think I tried to convey that. I would like to reiterate, and rephrase and try to be a better storyteller. Yesterday, I had a partner, Sochiata, and I think she has her topmost strength is achievers. So what she does, again, I would like to reiterate for the rest of the group, she implicate that achiever strength to her team. So whenever she has a new project, she bring that, what is the goal of the project and what needs to be done. And then she buys in by her team itself and asking them how they can help and contribute in a way to achieve this goal. And I think by this way, she's replicating herself in a way that achiever strength is going to all the teammates. And I think that's the best example I've heard, and thank you, Sucheta. Yesterday I'm going back to the Kevin's example. I say I'm reinforcing and you're saying revalidating that it was her who has shared that example. Thank you, Sucheta, and I hope that's helpful for this group as well. Thank you.
I think that's an excellent example. Thank you so much for sharing, Tejinder. One of the things I will say is that, collaboration is a wonderful thing. Five heads, five people are better than one. No matter what you can do as one person, you can do so much more by, empowering your team and working with your team towards a goal. So I appreciate you sharing that. Would anyone else? Oh, Elvie?
Yes, I was going to say that if you foster trust, immediately leads to transparent communication. And the idea will be not to be a micromanager, trust your employees. And if you have good employees, they will always be good employees. If you have people that are not so motivated, then find ways to see what the reason is why they are not being motivated and show them that you trust them. And then hopefully that will lead to transparent communication and better performance.
Excellent. Absolutely. I feel like you've been paying attention in our Supervisory Academy courses. Thank you so much. Summer?
Yeah, I'll just share really quickly. One thing that our team does that's really effective is we have a admin support group meeting. So we meet bi-weekly, and this group is it's more like focused on things that you're finding frustrating in your job, and like we come together as a group to see how we can improve that process and make it better and less of a headache. So we're constantly trying to improve our processes, so it gives like that safe space, like, hey, this is really frustrating me, I need all your brains to kind of figure this out. So that's something that our team does. It's really great.
Excellent. I'm sure it's not only improved your processes and your effectiveness, but I would say if you work on anything where you get if you get funding and stuff like that, you might have increased your funding by implementing these new processes.
Exactly.
Yeah, because great. Thank you so much for sharing. So I'm going to go over the individual really quickly as well, real quick. So at the individual level, when an employee feels empowered and trusted, they're more willing to go the extra mile for the team and the business. When they take ownership and responsibility, they know how to mitigate risks when to resolve, when to provide a solution and when to take an issue to a senior team member or a manager. So what we've heard throughout is, people being like, hey, I need help. Let me get help from you on the team. That is also a representation of that individual being empowered to, ask for help, which is a huge thing at Stanford as a culture and a community, but also a huge sign of, responsibility and accountability in that individual. And then many of you have probably heard this individual kind of ownership and responsibility through lean and agile frameworks if you've had lean and agile courses before. So in sum, to summarize this beautiful chart we have, freedom and responsibility equals empowerment. Regardless of where you place it in the organizational hierarchy, it's likely what you're going to get. It's been proven time and time again at Netflix, for example, as well as many other organizations. So any questions on this slide before we move on to empowerment traits? Okie dokie. So we have 4 empowerment traits here as defined by SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resources Management. If you don't know, this is the SHRM is a very big kind of partner with Stanford in the sense of, we take what they say very seriously and we kind of hold them at the highest standard. So we're getting the best information to you is kind of what I'm saying. So I'm going to go over each of these and then I can ask you for questions, or if you'd like to share examples of what you've experienced in regards to these traits. So openness and curiosity. So that consists of respectfully listening, and that's sending the message that people are valued and respected. Being open and inviting ideas from others will increase empowerment within your team. Trust and development. The skills of a manager to gain the respect and support of the team members is another critical factor. If employees are trusted and they're trusted by their manager, and they felt that their manager had their back, quote unquote, and would support them in an issue or an endeavor or in whatever decision that they make, employees will feel more empowered. Research found that when managers were more effective in two-way communication and willing to make changes, these skills generated greater empowerment. Empowerment requires extra effort and energy from employees. When there's a low level of trust in a team leader, employees resist empowerment. There's a very strong correlation between the emphasis of a team has on development and high empowerment. So the more emphasis the team has on, bettering themselves and, progressing and developing each other and themselves, the higher the empowerment is on that team. Developing team members sends a message that employees are valued and that the organization is willing to invest in them as people. So an example of that is this course, for example, Supervisory Academy as a whole. Like, Stanford is willing to invest in you. We want you to be the best that you can be. And we also want you to acquire the necessary knowledge that you need to be an effective manager. Recognition and encouragement. Those things that are rewarded are repeated. Time and time again, started with Pavlov and his dogs. I don't know if any of y'all studied psychology, but Pavlov is a behavioral scientist, and he would reward dogs for doing things correctly. And because of that reward, so as you would train a dog or train any animal, if you reward them, they'll repeat those behaviors. Empowerment requires team members to make some effort and take some risks. Those leaders who recognize and encourage employee when they see an extra effort or risk-taking get more of that behavior in the future. Leaders who were effective at showing appreciation had higher empowerment scores. Most people managers don't recognize and reward others often enough. So I can give you an example of that in my own personal life. So we can go back to the same example of transitioning Supervisory Academy from on-site to online. And through that transition, I got a lot of good feedback from my manager. And because of that, we've been able to really expand the program. So now, you'll notice we're recording more. We're giving you a better experience with our courses because, I've been empowered to be able to do that. And it's really just enhanced our recognition within the organization. And then lastly, transparency and authority. So communication, when a team member has an authority to make a decision, they feel more empowered. If they make a decision that gets reversed by their manager, that empowerment quickly dissipates. Leaders need to make sure that employees are skilled and knowledgeable enough to make a good decision before they're given authority. And this may relate to your question, Ned. The more control people have over the work and how it's done, the higher their sense of empowerment and the less stress on the employee. And Jeffrey Pfeffer of the Graduate School of Business, if you've ever read Dying for a Paycheck, he talks about this specifically, where when you have less authority, you have more stress because you have a lot more uncertainty in your life of how things get done. But one of the major things for managers to do is ensure that their employees are skilled enough to take on that challenge or take on that authority or responsibility. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor. Would anyone care to give an example of any of these traits that they've seen, either at Stanford or at other organizations? Or at home, depending. Go ahead, Linda.
I guess I could talk to openness and curiosity in a way because it's one of the fundamental aspects of our kind of premier fellowship program here, that we utilize a lot of brainstorming and team exercises where everybody's opinion counts and there are no bad ideas and that sort of thing. So that's within our fellowship, but it's very interesting how that has, I won't say it was as deliberate before, but it is beginning to be more deliberate. It's kind of those fellowship programming ideals have leaked into our staff cohort of 6-8 people. And it's really, I think it's sparked a lot of trust and respect out of having that open and curiosity format and environment. It's just leading to better and better things.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. I've seen it happen too, as Kara and I have been working on, LEAP since 2020. And, you're a participant in that, and some others in this course are as well. Those power skills and those kind of those learnings have really also leaked into our team values and to, how we communicate with each other, how we give each other feedback and stuff like that. So I can totally see how that would happen. I really appreciate you sharing that, because it's a great.
Yeah, and I will say that with practice, it just becomes more and more natural, because it does feel natural, but it just, I don't know, there's something that makes it easier because you're all on the similar page. So it's fun.
Yeah. Excellent. Would anyone else like to share? The more you share, the more like ammo you have for these breakout rooms. I'm just saying.
Would it be okay to share an instance of not receiving one of these things?
Absolutely.
Okay, so on one of my staff appraisals last year, and this is part of the annual cycle, and this may be getting into topics that are beyond this session, but in this particular year, I had picked up a lot of departmental duties and done a lot of policy writing and expectation setting that was widely implemented in my department. And in the staff appraisal form, there's a section on sort of like where you fall in the spectrum from does not meet expectations to exceptional. And my manager had rated me a level below what I thought I should be. And when I asked about it, they said, oh, it's because you're not, like, in order to get to this next level, you would have to be doing more at the department level and at the organizational level. So it's impossible for anyone at your level, at your staff level, to get this rating. And that just kind of ruined my morale. And there was no swaying it, there was no changing it, and I had to sign off on it. And I signed off on it and emailed back like, let me know what else I can do to get a better rating next year. But that like completely killed the recognition and encouragement aspect for me, especially when it was coming from my own manager, and when others who were not my manager did see the value that I brought to the table and felt that I should be rated higher. So that was an instance of when I was lacking some support in that aspect.
Yeah, and I bet it really kind of decreased your motivation a lot to do the work that you were doing, to, to keep up with the policies and stuff like that. And I would argue that it probably even decreased your kind of volunteering or motivation to go above and beyond, and to go above the department level and work at the organizational level, where she's saying. That's terrible, and I'm sorry. And I've also had that experience. When I was not in this role, when I was in my previous role, it was very similar, where I was covering, like, basically we had like a transitional year, if you want to call it that. And instead of having my normal 2 faculty that I had and their corresponding fellowship and clerkship programs, I was put on about 8 faculty, and I got reviews. I got like that sheet filled out because you're supposed to do it with your faculty. I got it filled out from all 8 faculty, and I got them all to rate me a 5. And then my manager said, well, we're not going to give you, a 5 because we can't give everyone a 5. So we're going to give you a 3. And I was just like, well, hot damn, this sucks. And that turned into a very long conversation with my manager, and that also turned into me getting this role. So it wasn't a great experience, and I've been there with you. And I wonder if like what your manager could have done differently. You know what I mean? I wonder if they could have said, that I understand that you did this, or like agreed with you, but it's like, hey, but this is how the performance evaluation process works. I cannot, give you a higher score. And maybe by being a little bit more transparent with you, that could have alleviated some of that, I guess I want to say, like, stress and uncertainty that was caused by the way that situation went down. Elvie?
I personally think that grading should be eliminated.
I personally agree.
It doesn't make any sense, those numbers.
And there's a lot of research on that too. This is something that you could bring up in I think the ELR Supervisory Academy courses are coming up in May and June. These would be people to talk with this talk about this topic with, because these are the people that create the performance management process. And they also teach those performance management courses to managers and supervisors and stuff like that. So I would say, you know, bring over these types of questions to those supervisory academy sessions, because it'll be, you know, whereas I can't give you like direct like feedback and answers and stuff like that, they should be able to.
Of course, I'm just thinking that maybe they should find another way to just do that, you know, because it really kills people's, like the one example that we just had.
Yeah, and I see your comment too, Shelly. I've had a supervisor tell me the same thing. We can talk about performance management all day, but let's circle back to empowerment traits. Does anyone else have an example of an empowerment trait before I move on to these empowerment tactics? Oh, Morgan, I appreciate you for putting that in there. Okay. So these are some empowerment tactics. As you've heard, as we've gone along, there are many other empowerment tactics. And as someone said, I'm so sorry, I'm forgetting your name. I think it was Linda said, you know, any idea is a good idea, right? So when you get into your breakout rooms, which is going to be on the next slide, just kind of like it's brainstorm. It's kind of like a brain dump, brain dump. You know, any idea that you have in regards to an empowerment tactic is likely going to be a good idea, and it's likely going to be impactful. So let's go over these empowerment tactics. So number one, asking for input. So ask your team to be part of the decision-making process. And that could look like, you know, so for example, when my manager asked me to transition Supervisory Academy from on-site to online, you know, I was part of that decision-making process. She asked me, she's like, are you up to the challenge of doing this? And I said, yes. And so it was my decision on like what platform we got to use and stuff like that. So I was a part of that decision-making process. I was a part of her input. Ask for ideas and insights. Also, how can you improve your style to be more effective? So you can always ask them for feedback as well. Reinforce with positive feedback. Give positive recognition and feedback to the team members when they are effective. Again, you know, reward equals like continuous improvement and, you know, continued behavior of that specific behavior that you are rewarding. Especially when they take on a leadership role. So say you have a team member move into maybe a team lead role on a project or a program, reward them for that, you know, and develop leaders. So this aligns very well to what Kevin has said. You know, delegate projects and tasks to the team members and give them authority over those specific projects. This gives them a sense of value within the organization. Assign projects to high-performing team members and make them leaders on individual tasks. This will not only help alleviate your own workload, but it will also give your team members an opportunity to shine and to star. Stretch each team member's capabilities. So find ways to help each team member develop and contribute through using their strengths. Assign tasks that will allow your team members to grow and take on additional responsibilities. This can motivate them because it indicates that you feel they're valuable and competent. Explain the reason for this task being given to them, and, you know, what's, as Kevin would say, what's in it for me, what's in it for them. You know, why are they being asked to complete this task? Why are you giving it to them specifically? And that conversation can be like, hey, for example, Linda, I'm sorry, I'm picking on you today, you know, but here we go. Hey, Linda, you've been doing wonderful. I really like the way you manage this individual project you were on. And now I want to give you the opportunity to manage a team on a project. You know, it's going to be a cross-departmental, cross-functional team. Are you up to this challenge as a stretch assignment? And then let's align it to maybe your performance goals or your individual development plan. You know, let them know what's in it for them, because like, hey, if you knock this out of the park, we can then maybe talk about, you know, a spot bonus or reclassification or something like that, depending on what the employee is going for. And then we move on to mentor your team members. You know, focus on coaching them to success, help them to achieve not only the team or the company goals, but their own personal career goals as well. And this relates to Stay Conversations, which we have a recording of. So if you ever want information on that, we'll be happy to send that information to you. So find out where they are and what they want and where they want to be in the next year, in the next 5 years. You know, give them the tools that they need to develop and become successful. Encourage open communication. So make sure that you clearly communicate your goals and, you know, the goals of the projects that maybe you assign them and ideas that you have or ideas that they have, like, hey, you know, Sarah, you have this great idea to take this program virtual. You know, I really would like to see this happen. And with that happening, I'd like to see us expand our audience. So to make sure that not only are you taking over the project, but you're also understanding the employee is also understanding, you know, what you're expecting from that project. And encourage your team members to do the same. So when you're in that, you know, when you're in a team meeting and someone asks for help, ask them to be a little bit more clear, like, okay, what part of this do you need help with? Or are you coming to us with a problem that you want us to solve? Or do you want us to listen and maybe brainstorm solutions with you? Also establish an environment where team members are comfortable expressing their comments and feeling free to express and experiment with new ideas. Encourage your team members to contribute in brainstorming activities, commend them for their feedback, all of that good stuff. And then lastly, we have demonstrate you trust your team members. So give them the amount of authority that they need to complete a project without checking back along every single detail or along every single point of that project. With that, does anyone else have additional tactics that they've experienced that maybe weren't listed here or I haven't gone over that anyone would be welcome to use in our breakout room? Just an option. Okay, if no one has additional, does anyone have any questions on the ones that I've listed?
Sarah, I'm sorry, I might have missed it, but what did you say about demonstrate that you trust your team?
Oh, I said, you know, give them the amount of authority they need
Right.
to complete the project without, you know, having to check back in with them and maybe at every step. Maybe, you know, to go a little deeper on that, maybe it's like, okay, I'd like you to do this project. And then when you hit this milestone, let's come back and let's talk about it and see where we're at. So that way, especially if this is the employee's, you know, first project, you want to make sure that you and them can work together to alleviate anything that may be going wrong. So when you have like that milestone check, you can be like, oh, hey, you know, how did all of this work out? And if something went, you know, a little askew, you can maybe course correct and adapt and help them to learn how to do that adapting as they proceed in that project. Love the thumbs up, Linda. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, y'all, it's that time. Here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a lot of explanation here, and then Morgan will send you into breakout rooms. Morgan, do not send them until I like flag you, because this is a lot. Okay, so hopefully you've been paying attention. We are going to send you into those same breakout rooms you were in before. Those of you who joined late, who were in the main session with us, you'll be put into a breakout room as well. Morgan, I'm not sure how many people were in that, but if you can put them together, cool. If that's too many, you know what to do. So this is exercise 1, applying empowerment tactics. So the first thing you're going to do in your group is you're going to think about the first action question. So as a manager, what can you do to improve the employee experience on your team? If you're already empowering your employees, how could you expand or enhance your technique? So that's the brain dump I was talking about, right? Like, what ideas do you have? What could you do? What have one of you tried in your group that you want to add to that? You know what I mean? That maybe someone else hasn't tried or hasn't heard of. So that's the brain dump. And then after you write all that down, you're going to move on to impact. So for each thing that you list, think about how that'll impact your level of engagement personally as a manager, and also your employees' level of engagement. Does that make sense? Any questions on this portion? Summer shaking her head. Loving it, Summer. Thank you so much. Okay, so Morgan's going to go ahead and link in the chat a Google slide deck, or a Google slide deck, I think that's what it's called. And every single breakout room is going to have their own slide. And so what this is going to culminate into is an entire, kind of PDF, once we download it, of ideas and tactics for everyone to be able to take back with them and refer to in the future. And so this is what it looks like. So this is, for example, breakout room 1. So depending on your breakout room number, that's your corresponding slide number. So for example, when you get sent into your breakout rooms, you're going to have a little box pop up and it's going to be black with a blue button that says join. Before you click join, check what your breakout room number is, and that's your corresponding slide. And if you have any questions, feel free to, message Morgan at any point because we can see what rooms everyone's in. And that's your corresponding slide. And then when we come back, we will review what we've done. And then we'll send you on another breakout, which refers to the second slide that you'll see it, but we'll go over a little bit more about it before we get into it. So does this make sense? And now that Morgan's put the information in the chat, can everyone access the document?
We can access it, but it's view only.
Oh, thank you for letting me know. Hold on. Anyone that can view, let me change. Editor. Okay, I've changed it to editor. Can you edit now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, excellent. All right, if there's any other issues, feel free to Slack myself or Morgan during this. You will have 10 minutes. So I suggest doing 5 minutes on the action, 5 minutes on the impact, and then coming back. If it's not enough time, don't worry. We will have enough time to add additional time onto that second breakout if you still need to add more to this first one, okay? All right, Morgan, whenever you're ready. I see someone ask for more time. If you can just do the raised hand feature right now, if you would like more time on that, we can always add more time to the next breakout. So you can do that and then the next one. So I've got like 2 people, 3, 4. Ooh, okay. So I'm thinking, Morgan, for the next one, we'll do maybe like 12 minutes instead of 10 minutes. Give them a little bit more time. All right, y'all can put your hands down. We lost track of time, didn't do much with impact. Okay. Okay, cool. All right, let me share my screen again. Okay, so we're coming back to the employee experience journey, back to our focus of where we were, because now we're going to ask you to target those brainstorming activities, right? Or excuse me, target those tactics that you came up with in respectively where our focus is. So once the employee starts on the job and when they're about ready to like exit the job. So that looks like this beautiful employee experience curve. So between stages 3 to 5, these are also the kind of the key points where, employees either have a really, really good experience or perhaps a very negative experience. And we want to be able to empower them at each of these stages. So I'll go through these really quickly. So new to role is to me a little bit self-explanatory. So think of new to role within their first 6 months, right? Especially at Stanford, I feel like Stanford has a lot of cumbersome, processes and like, as someone said earlier, acronyms that you need to learn and specific, things that Stanford does special for Stanford. So I'm thinking new to role is that first 6 months. Building skills is 6 months, maybe onward to maybe a year or a year and a half, depending on, where this employee is joining at. So for example, if you have a clinical research associate and it's their first time in clinical research, maybe outside of being a TA or something like that for a professor, it's probably going to take a lot longer for them to build those skills. But once they build all the skills, then they understand the job, they understand their purpose, they understand their role completely. That's when they're at the top of their game. Getting restless or bored is what happens when, for example, in Wei Chen's example, where she's gone out and tried to achieve more and do all these stretch assignments and stuff like that, but she hasn't been able to kind of either promote herself or get to that next level or get that 5 on her performance appraisal, excuse me. And then time for a new opportunity is when maybe you are Wei Chen, right? Maybe you've done all these stretch assignments, you've really expanded your knowledge and you're hitting the ceiling for that role. So that would be time for a new opportunity. So along this curve, are there any questions either about the curve in general or at specific points? Okie dokie. Would anyone like to give an example of maybe an empowerment tactic that you and your team came up with during this brainstorm session that you could apply to one of these points, or perhaps all of these points along the employee experience curve?
I'll do one, Sarah.
All right, let's go.
So for the top of the game, we had talked about, having open communication with your employee and not assuming and I said this is more or less being more in career development for performance management. If someone can be in the top of their game, and for the manager to not assume that they're looking for a promotion or looking outside of the department. Sometimes employees are comfortable or looking to stay within their role. And I think as a manager, when we're talking about employee experiences, how do you have that conversation with the employee on understanding, well, if you're comfortable and you're at the top of the game, how can we, enhance more skill sets for you to even be better in your role than you already are. And I say this because, as each day we're in our own careers, there's something that I'm sure we learn, within the hour, within the day. So how can you provide that to the employee to allow them to be even better in their top game? And that, in our view, is allowing them to have that employee experience of being valued, heard, and trusted at that point.
Excellent example. Thank you so much for sharing. And that, what you've suggested there really goes to me along anything, like while they're at the top of their game, but also, maybe also into getting restless or bored, or even where they're at a time for a new opportunity. You could also help them or coach them into how to get that new opportunity. So for example, if it's like internal mobility where they're like, oh, hey, I'm an AA1 or AA3, and I really want to be, a financial analyst, helping them to get financial experience similar to what a financial analyst would do would be very, very beneficial. Thank you so much for sharing. With that, so now that you have all of your brainstorming done, you have the tactics, and some of you may have not gotten to the impact, you are more than welcome to continue on that impact for the first few minutes of this next breakout, or you can go ahead and start on the next breakout if you like, and you could always come back to it later. It really depends on what your team decides is best. But for that, what we're gonna do next in our next breakout room is a little different. So you're going to see a very similar slide like this on the employee empowerment Google slide deck. And it should be, so if you saw breakout room 1, so for example, and you have that first slide and you filled out some things there, right under that slide should also say breakout room 1, targeted empowerment. And that'll be what you'll be working on this time. And so you're going to choose a point in life cycle. And by choose, it means we're going to choose for you because we want everyone to be kind of across, we want at the end of this for everyone to be able to walk away with information for every point in this employee life cycle, if that makes sense. So Morgan will put more details in the chat. The breakout is going to be 12 minutes. We can do 15. That might be better. Morgan, let's do 15 minutes. Thanks for asking. And so what this is going to look like. So breakout rooms 1 and 2, you're going to do new to role. Breakout rooms 3 and 4, you're going to do building skills. Breakout rooms 5, 6, and 7, you're going to do top of game. Breakout rooms 8 and 9, getting restless or bored. And breakout rooms 10 and 11, you're going to be doing time for a new opportunity. With that, if you think something's really good for another part, like not only like say you're assigned top of game. If you believe, for Soci's example, assigning stretch assignments and stuff like that and communicating well with your employee is really good for top of game, but also could work anywhere else, don't limit yourself. You know what I mean? So if you think it's good for the whole thing, still put it under top of game, because really, if you could utilize it anywhere, that's wonderful. But there could be specific things at specific points in the cycle that would be relevant in targeted employment empowerment. I may have just made it more confusing. I apologize. Does that make sense? Okay, you're nodding. Okay, cool. Yeah, okay, amazing. Morgan's put it in the chat. The Google Doc is up and editable. Amazing. You will have a full 15 minutes. Morgan's going to give you a reminder at about 5 minutes. And if you have any questions, again, we are all on Slack, and you're also welcome to like chat us at any time. Are there any questions before we send you to your final breakout? Okie dokie.